The 1990s, a decade of neon colors, booming pop culture, and the golden age of Saturday morning cartoons. But here's the twist. While kids were glued to the likes of Pokémon or Dexter's Laboratory, a very different world of animation was bubbling beneath the surface, one dripping with sex, violence, and psychological darkness. These weren't the safe, brightly colored shows we all pretended cartoons had to be. They were subversive, dangerous, and very much not for kids. Yet somehow, many of us found ourselves watching them anyway. And whether we realized it or not, these shows weren't just entertainment. They were quietly shaping, and sometimes damaging, the minds of a generation. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on 10 90s adult cartoons that secretly damaged you. Prepare for shock, nostalgia, and maybe a little self-reflection, because chances are you've seen at least one of these shows, and it probably left a mark you didn't even notice. 10. The Maxx, 1995. We start our list with something darker, subtler, and strangely beautiful. An MTV experiment. The Maxx was a psychological action series that blended superhero tropes with trauma, abuse, and mental illness. It told the story of a homeless man who believed he was a superhero in an alternate dimension. But most of the time, he was just struggling in a harsh reality. For adults, it was deep, layered storytelling. For kids, it was confusing and disturbing. Themes of assault, trauma, and fractured identity weren't just implied, they were central. This show introduced audiences to psychological surrealism, the idea that reality and fantasy bleed together when trauma reshapes perception. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a heavy dose of existential psychology disguised as a cartoon, and if you were too young to process it, chances are it haunted you for years afterward.
The jungle, scourge of the city. Journey to worlds undreamt of. With the Maxx, you've never seen a hero.
9. The Goddamn George Liquor Program, 1997. This one is a hidden gem of vulgarity. Created by John Kay, the same mind behind Ren and Stimpy, the Goddamn George Liquor Program was one of the earliest internet flash cartoons, and it was unfiltered chaos, violent, crass, and deeply offensive by design. Unlike TV shows with at least some censorship, this online cartoon had none. That made it revolutionary, but also dangerous. Anyone, including kids with early dial-up internet access, could stumble across it. Psychologists today might call this unregulated exposure, content with no guardrails, no ratings, no parental checks. It was the wild frontier of internet animation, and George Liquor stood proudly as its drunken sheriff. For kids, it meant their first taste of digital anarchy.
Who wants to lick the pants? Yes!
8. The Brothers Grunt, 1994 to 1995. Here's where things get really bizarre. The Brothers Grunt, another MTV creation, was grotesque even by 90s standards. The show featured pale, veiny humanoids wandering through surreal, gross-out adventures filled with bizarre body horror. Critics hated it. Kids who watched it, traumatized. From a psychological standpoint, this taps into the concept of the uncanny valley, when something looks almost human, but not quite, triggering discomfort and fear. For developing minds, that discomfort can turn into lasting anxiety. The Brothers Grunt didn't just gross you out. It made you question why anyone thought this should exist, which ironically is probably exactly what MTV wanted.
Look, it's not that confusing. There are 6 brothers from another planet, right? One of them, Perry, is lost here on Earth. All the other ones have to find him or their way of life is destroyed.
7. Duckman, 1994 to 1997. Imagine if The Simpsons got drunk, divorced, and started yelling about sex every 5 minutes. That's Duckman, voiced by Jason Alexander. Yes, George from Seinfeld. Duckman was a foul-mouthed private detective waddling through cases with plenty of raunchy humor and shocking social commentary. It was witty, yes, but it was also loaded with cynicism, broken families, and adult jokes that flew right over the heads of kids who stumbled upon it. From a psychological angle, Duckman attacked the very concept of the nuclear family. While other cartoons sold idealized versions of home life, Duckman shoved dysfunction in your face. For young viewers, it could plant seeds of skepticism toward family values, normalizing dysfunction as inevitable. The result? Viewers laughed, but they also internalized a darker worldview.
You took a bullet from me?
It's all right. I've got another kidney.
Who are you?
The name's Corn-Fed.
Well, I'm Duckman. Want to be my partner?
Sure, if I don't die. Oh, that smarts.
You're not gonna die. You're not gonna die. I'll get you to the hospital if it's the last thing I do. I won't think about anything else till I know you're all right. These things free.
6. Beavis and Butt-Head, 1993 to 1997. Let's be honest, if you grew up in the 90s, chances are you either watched Beavis and Butt-Head or you were warned to stay far, far away from it. MTV's dumbest duo were rude, crude, and endlessly entertained by toilet humor and heavy metal music videos. At first glance, it was harmless stupidity. But here's the kicker. Millions of teens thought they were hilarious role models. Psychologists call this social learning theory, the idea that we imitate behaviors we see, especially when those behaviors are rewarded with laughs. The result? A generation of kids acting dumber on purpose, thinking rebellion and idiocy were somehow cool. Sure, Beavis and Butt-Head were meant to be a parody of slackers, but for many viewers, they became heroes of anti-intellectualism. Schools hated them, parents banned them, but the damage already done.
Yeah?
We tricked him.
He's probably like, there's nobody here. I wonder who did that.
Hey! What the hell's wrong with you two?
5. Liquid television, 1991 to 1995. Finally, for part 1, we have MTV's experimental showcase, Liquid Television. This wasn't one show, but a collage of strange, edgy shorts. Some funny, some violent, some just plain disturbing. It gave birth to Aeon Flux and influenced countless artists. But the bigger issue? It shattered the boundaries of what animation could be. For impressionable minds, it was like entering a carnival funhouse with no exit signs. Anything could happen, and often did. This unpredictability taps into what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. The brain's struggle to reconcile conflicting ideas. One moment you're laughing, the next you're horrified. That emotional whiplash, it's addictive, but it also unsettles you in ways you don't forget. 4. Todd McFarlane's Spawn, 1997 to 1999. Now let's turn the darkness up a notch. Todd McFarlane's Spawn wasn't just violent, it was hellish. With its demonic imagery, gore, and nihilistic themes, this HBO series was a direct challenge to the idea that cartoons were safe. Spawn himself was a betrayed soldier who makes a deal with the devil and returns as a tortured anti-hero. Sounds cool, right? But imagine being 12 years old and watching that. From a psychological lens, Spawn pushed kids toward what's called existential dread, the awareness of mortality, morality, and the darkness of human nature. Instead of colorful superheroes teaching justice, Spawn showed betrayal, death, and eternal damnation. 3. Spicy City, 1997. If Aeon Flux was abstract, Ralph Bakshi's Spicy City was blunt. Imagine Sin City, but animated, drenched in neon noir, and loaded with sex. HBO marketed it as the adult answer to Saturday morning cartoons. But what it really became was a fever dream of erotic pulp fiction. For adults, it was edgy fun. For kids who stumbled across it late at night, it was a crash course in hypersexualized imagery. This is where the concept of premature exposure comes in. Developmental studies show that early, unfiltered exposure to sexual content can skew expectations of relationships, intimacy, and gender roles. And Spicy City offered no guidebook, just pure, raw imagery. 2. Aeon Flux, 1991 to 1995. If South Park corrupted kids with humor, Aeon Flux confused them with surreal eroticism. MTV's late-night sci-fi epic wasn't just violent, it was weird. Bodies bent in impossible ways, people died in grotesque detail, and half the time, the story made zero sense. But one thing always stood out: the erotic undertones. For curious young minds, this show was like opening Pandora's box. Without context, it mixed violence and sexuality in a way that blurred boundaries. Developmental psychologists would call this associative imprinting, where two unrelated concepts, sex and death, get wired together in the brain. Not exactly the healthiest introduction to adult themes. 1. South Park, 1997. The king of controversy, South Park. On the surface, it looked like a crude cutout-style comedy about four foul-mouthed kids. But beneath the fart jokes and profanity, it was, and still is, one of the sharpest satirical weapons in television history. The problem? Younger audiences didn't see the satire. They just copied the swearing, the crude jokes, and the nothing matters attitude. Psychologists call this modeling behavior, when kids imitate what they see without processing the nuance. So instead of getting a witty critique of politics and culture, a whole generation of middle schoolers just went around yelling, "Respect my authority," at teachers. Fun? Yes. Healthy? Maybe not.
I want to kiss when you taste a burger. Shut up, fat ass!
Life lessons. What we can learn. So what do we take from all this? 1. Cartoons aren't just for kids. They can be powerful tools of commentary, but they can also confuse and harm if consumed too early. 2. The forbidden is always more tempting. Part of the reason these shows had such an impact was because they felt like secret worlds kids weren't supposed to see. 3. Media shapes us more than we realize. Even crude jokes or surreal images can plant ideas that linger for years. The positive side? These shows expanded the possibilities of animation, paving the way for today's diverse and complex animated storytelling. The negative? They also left scars, subtle or not, on those who weren't ready for what they showed. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, subscribe, and share your wild 90s cartoon memories in the comments. I'd love to hear them.